Hey, what's up, y'all? Welcome to SpicySnafu, where it's always situation normal. Particularly today, I like painting. 40K models, deer blinds, sheds, furniture, bang sticks, you name it. There's just something about random catting things that satisfies my inner redneck, and I just got the tism. Here in Texas, we have two seasons, hot and not as hot, so I realized pretty quickly how Black Rifle sitting on my tailgate in the summertime gets warm. I was never government property, so I don't have any personal anecdotes about how hot the desert gets, but I can imagine. In addition to the temperature factors, camouflage is always nice. Whether it's the silhouette of a human carrying a large black stick, or that black is not as common of a color in nature, at least not around these parts, where everything is varying shades of green or brown. And thirdly, the vibes. In a sea of tactical peanut butter and Henry Ford color options, dare to give no f. If you want to paint that thing Miami Tiger Stripe, you do it, Doug. I like to add some personal flair to my gear, so maybe it's a tism, maybe it's my rebellious nature, or just that I like painting things, but again, that's how I roll. There are a lot of rifle painting videos out there, and I've watched a lot of them, because again, I like painting. So originally, I started this out as a how-to video, and while painting, I decided to change it up. This is a how not to paint your rifle video. I intentionally did things I shouldn't do, tried something completely new and experimented, made a point to half-ass my prep phase, and I even used the forbidden spray paint. So thanks for tuning in, and let's talk about paint. And if you want to hang around till the end, we'll talk about a step that I really think more people should include when they're done painting. I've been wanting to do a retro mid-length thing for a while, and PSA Daily Deals just eventually made me an offer I couldn't refuse. And I figured it would be a good opportunity to film some rifle painting. So after you've got your rifle in the state you want to paint it in, you know what I mean? Some people are real particular about swapping parts after they painted something because it's going to be that one thing that's not green or whatever color. Either way, you do you. So step one when painting is always prep for anything. But for rifles, we really want to focus on degreasing and taping. I've used a few different products to degrease, including brake clean. You don't need something as harsh as brake cleaner for an initial paint, but if you're trying to strip something, it actually is kind of helpful. Not your optics and electronics though, just BT dubs. I use 70% rubbing alcohol this time instead of the 99% I pretty much always use, and I really quickly rub the rifle down with a rag. I used a rag that also has lots of fuzzies and made me have to go back, and so there's, crap in the paint. Later on, you'll notice there may be some bugs in the paint too. So 70% alcohol should be fine as long as you're being thorough, and I didn't use any Q-tips to get in the cracks either, so definitely not as thorough as I normally would be. You just want to get all the oil off the metal initially, otherwise you're going to have some cracking and the paint will not properly bond, and there's a couple spots where that happened. I normally use a reusable stencil. I've got one from Primary Arms, and I think the other one's from Amazon. I don't honestly remember. I've never used sticker stencils before, and that's something I really kind of wanted to try. I painted some things already this summer and used my traditional laundry bag and natural veg and cardboard with the stencils to make sure I don't have any overspray. I was searching for DIY stencils on Google, and it turns out there was an ARFCOM thread, like always, where a guy took some blue painter's tape on some wax paper and drew some blobs in camo shapes and cut them out. I didn't read about 4 or 5 posts down. He said he didn't really work out and he bought some sticker stencils anyway. I just looked at the pictures. So I took my multicam stencil, drew out a rough template for my attempt to make some woodland camo style blobs. In retrospect, I probably should have made a second sheet, but I was just trying this out as an experiment. I should have been a little more thorough when cutting as well. I had to rip a few of the stencils out, and it, kind of got the tape sticky and made it a pain in the butt when I was painting. The stencils did work out pretty well though, but I did use an older, cheaper roll of blue painter's tape, and if I had used something like frog tape or a brand new roll of some name brand painter's tape, it probably wouldn't have had some of the issues that I had as far as tape peeling and some bleeding through the tape with the forbidden spray paint. So there's lots of ways to paint things, lots of different kinds of paints between Cerakote you can do at home if you take stuff apart, Alumahide, you name it. I personally always use Rust-Oleum. That's just what's at our Walmart. Nothing wrong with Krylon. That's what I've got. So I realized after cutting the stencils, I was missing one of the primary colors for woodland camo, and that is black. And unfortunately, the options I had at home were slim, and I was left with 2 choices. A high heat enamel paint for grills, which may work well, but I was concerned that it would be a little thick, and then the forbidden spray paint. So you may have used this in your hood rat days back when you were younger, but this is the most awful, cheap, runny, watery garbage spray paint ever shoved into a pressurized container, and my commitment to making this how not to video. So this is a glossy paint, and as most of y'all can already see where I'm going with this, is generally not a good idea at all whatsoever for painting rifles. So normally do 2 light coats of the base color just to make sure you get a good bond with the metal. And if there's, some kind of cracking, you didn't waste more time or paint. And that way the base color is going to be the one that's least visible anyway, depending on how you paint and if you're using stencils or not. So you always got to give it proper time to dry on the paint. I don't necessarily trust what it says on the back of the can, especially if you're painting on it a little thicker. So we don't want to do that on the base coat. And normally when using stencils, like I said earlier, I use some cardboard to avoid the overspray. At least untie the gun between stencil sessions and set it on some cardboard on the ground so it wasn't a complete disaster. A lot of times you can get a stool or something you don't mind having some paint on, like a sawhorse, and prop up the front end of the gun when it's tied, and super easy peasy. Get your stencil on there and kind of lay the gun flat. You're always going to give it proper time to dry between coats. You're not going to, be putting wet paint on wet paint, and this is exactly how the Forbidden Spray Paint went. So it's super thin. I had to lather it on there real thick, and I started later in the day. Sun went down, temperature dropped, and things started drying slower. I have about an hour timer in between coats just to make sure everything's dry, depending on what time of day it is. The first coats were fine. This one of the black, however, it was pretty close, and I went ahead and just applied the next color. I ended up doing 5 colors total with the tan, the brown, the black, and both the green colors. I didn't get the last green one on camera in the morning. I just kind of went out there and dusted it a little bit. So let's check out how bad this thing looks and do a little bit of a reveal. So normally paint needs to cure for it to harden, but where's the fun in that? I finished that coat of green in the morning, had breakfast, went to the range, and later that afternoon I untaped this abomination. I definitely ripped some of the paint peeling off the painter's tape, just trying to get it off there. So again, letting it cure. So overall, the stencils by themselves actually worked out pretty well. Even if this is the wrong way video, I will definitely try them again and use some frog tape or better tape next time to avoid some of the paint bleeding through. I ended up using a lot of the extra tape on the outside of the blobs just to kind of cover random parts of the rifle, and it took a little longer than I expected, but it ended up giving some interesting vibes and, just blobs around here. Overall, I really am not hating this, but I don't really love it either. The glossy black is absolutely killing me inside, and I don't know why I did so many stencils with the tan. I don't know if I was feeling artsy or whatever happened. So one of my favorite steps at the end of painting, especially if you're happy with your paint job and you want it to last, my Frankenstein rifle I painted over 10 years ago, and I repainted the lower with this video, but the upper, it's never been redone. And I was able to bake the paint on. If you can use your oven in the kitchen, cool. If not, don't get in trouble. But being able to bake on the paint on some of the layers and then doing a clear coat afterwards, it was a huge benefit to keeping that paint color around. So for clear coat, get the mattest thing you can. I've got one at Walmart that's flat, so maybe there's an ultra matte or whatever more matte clear out there, but it's super easy. You can do the coats pretty quickly in between because it dries faster, and just give it a little dusting. It's going to wear off on all the parts you're constantly touching anyway, like the grip. If you like your paint job, you can kind of make it stick around a little longer. Thanks again for watching, guys. Really appreciate y'all. Check me out on Instagram at SpicySnafu. And if you're already in here on YouTube, you know what to do. Do all the YouTube stuff, like, follow, subscribe, whatever. If you think this was helpful, I really appreciate y'all for being here. Thanks again for your support and watching. And until next time, stay safe. And if you can't stay safe, stay spicy.